Hello, I'm Patrick, and welcome to the Patrick's Green Tea podcast. This podcast is about mainly my experiences with marijuana and the culture, music, etiquette, and effects that are associated with it. There's really a whole world that revolves around this substance, so there's plenty to dig into, and I thought that would be a great subject for a podcast. And I created this podcast because there really isn't anything out there that I know of that documents people's high experiences in this way, a sort of long form, sort of naturalistic way. And also, let me just say that I do not condone the use of drugs, legal or otherwise. This podcast is purely for documentary and entertainment purposes. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be pretty natural and unstructured. I was considering doing something more structured, but I mean the main part of the podcast is going to be like that, unstructured. But I'm thinking of adding a prologue and like an outro to sort of bookend each episode. So that's pretty much where the structure is going to come from. But as for the actual recordings themselves, I prefer the raw, like documentary feel of the episodes over something that's more polished. Documenting my thought patterns and such while high is more important to me in deciding what I want to put out there. So I think all the trip ups and all that, and the stumbling over my words, and especially in the first few episodes where I'm trying to just figure out how to wrangle my thoughts as I'm recording, is sort of valuable in and of itself. So I thought that would be it would be good to keep that stuff in. And I might have little edits here and there, but like I don't know, if I go into something too personal that I decide later on that I don't want to include, or if there's something that I don't know, like loud noises and stuff like that, I'll edit down so it's not as harsh to the ear, stuff like that. And episodes can be listened to in any order, and skipped or missed episodes won't cause you to lose your place. So I'm just going to keep releasing them. There's no obligation for you to start at episode number 1, unless you want to. Each episode I think stands alone. And also the podcast episode lengths vary. They're usually I think about an hour, but recently they've been a lot shorter, like anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. So I'm thinking for those really short ones, I'll combine them into one long episode when I get to them. And I guess I didn't mention this, but I have about 2 years of podcasts recorded so far, of episodes, I should say. And it's going to be a while before they actually catch up to present day. But I wanted to have a sort of library of stuff to release, so I wouldn't be pressured to sort of recording a podcast every week, that I could take my time once I started actually recording. I didn't think it would take 2 years to actually start releasing stuff, but one thing led to another, and I didn't really get around to it. But recently I've been sort of motivated by a bunch of different things, and I finally want to pull the trigger and actually release this thing. Like I said, episodes will have a prologue, and the purpose of that will be to explain the context of the episode and different things I've noticed that maybe I want to point out, to listen for. And also an outro just to shout out the different social media pages and the Patreon and all that stuff. And I'll mention those later in this episode. Podcasts will be released on a bi-weekly basis. I don't know if this will probably be variable, since I'm currently in college full time, so I don't know what the release schedule is going to be like. I don't know if I'll have to release less or more. I think it'll depend. But for right now, I'm going to try to stick to a bi-weekly basis. And so there are about 30 episodes recorded as of now, but I still have to listen back through all of them. I have to record the intros and outros and edit all the stuff I need to, if need be. So, we'll see it as time goes on. Currently, the podcast does not have any sponsors, but that's a goal of mine for the future. I'm fine doing the podcast for free for the pure enjoyment of my listeners, but things like media hosting and domain names aren't free, so it'd be nice to have at least those covered by patrons or sponsors. And honestly, like, I'm totally new to the whole Patreon thing. I've heard of other creators using it and stuff, but I've never had a Patreon page for myself. So that's a really cool concept for me, for fans being able to, contribute directly to the creator. And I think that's a super awesome idea for maintaining things and not having to rely on sponsors or like YouTube revenue or anything like that. And also, I think, speaking of Patreon exclusive episodes will probably be a thing to reward those who donate to the podcast. And other little exclusives also, though I have, there are supplemental like writing elements to the podcast that I've created, where either I wasn't in a good spot to record or I had thoughts afterwards or whatever. So maybe I'll release some of those as patron only. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But also, for probably most of the episodes, I have examples of like the music that I listened to during the high, and even on nights when I didn't record the episodes and I was just high, I have playlists of songs that I either listened to or songs I listened to sober that I wanted to listen to while I was high. So I would love to release that for everyone to hear and sort of like, I don't know, sort of like share that whole thing. Because I've come across a lot of really cool songs just being in really cool environments and, that sort of stuff. It's pretty varied, so, but all of them are super good stuff. So the release sites and social media. So you can find the podcast at PatricksGreenTea. If you want to connect through Gmail and contact me through that, that's a possibility. PatricksGreenTea on Patreon, Reddit, Discord, Spotify, Twitch, and Bandcamp also. But it's Patrick's Green Tea Podcast on Instagram and SoundCloud, and it's at Patrick Green Tea without an S on Twitter. That's just based on the availability of the names and everything. So SoundCloud will host only a few of the most recent episodes because there's like a 3-hour limit with the free plan. But with Patreon, I would love to be able to buy the higher tiered plan, which allows for unlimited audio storage, and have every episode hosted on there. But that's not a priority for right now, I think. I can release the podcast through Stitcher and hopefully iTunes. If they don't, I don't know. I don't really see a reason for them not to let me on iTunes. But for any reason, if the podcast isn't whatever the word isn't allowed or whatever on iTunes, then it's going to be available on Stitcher and Google. What is it called? Google Podcasts. And Google Podcasts does it automatically just based on RSS feeds, I guess. So the podcast will be available. And I have an archive.org account that I need to figure that out to see if that is another viable option for hosting. But, and maybe YouTube. But yeah, probably YouTube. Yeah, I just want to have this in as many places as possible to make it as easy as possible for you guys to listen to it. And the subreddit for this podcast and the Discord server, as of the recording of this episode, those are all coming soon. But like I said, that's not really top priority right now. Priority for me is just releasing the podcast and getting things, getting the prologues and outros recorded, and then I'll worry about all the Discord servers and stuff like that later. So that's it for the notes I have for this episode. I thought it would be nice to have an intro, and sort of give out the lay of the land on this. So I'm really looking forward to the reception this podcast will get. I've been sort of doing it blindly with no feedback except for like a few of my friends, and I think there's a lot of value in it. Obviously, I mean, like, I wouldn't record it if I didn't think so. I would love to share what I've learned and what I've experienced and all that with the rest of the world. So thank you so much for listening. It's a real pleasure to be able to record this and release it for you guys, and we'll see where this goes.